Good morning, gang. Happy Friday morning. Okay, yesterday was one hell of a day, wasn't it? God knows we had enough stuff going on in the world, or at least in the United States, or affecting the United States, that make your head spin. Uh, we started off yesterday with the Supreme Court hearing of the legitimacy of Colorado trying to pull Trump off the ballot. Basically, Colorado got laughed out of the courthouse. If you read anything or listened to anything on it, it would not surprise me if, when the Supreme Court issues their ruling on this, which is expected within days or short weeks, okay, it would not surprise me that this comes in 8-1 or 9-0. Okay, probably 9-0. That Trump stays on the ballot. Every one of the justices, including all three official liberal justices and even Chief Justice Roberts, tore Colorado a new asshole in this one yesterday. It wasn't even funny. There were legitimate first-year law school students could have asked Colorado about some of these ideas, and the mumbling and bumbling of the AG was just incredible. So that was a good start for the day. You can pretty much figure that this amount of election interference, in other words, getting Trump off the ballot, will now be over. Okay, we'll no longer have to hear any of this BS, because as one of the justices put it, he goes, "We don't need just a couple of states deciding who the president is, because inevitably what's going to happen is, well, gee, you take Trump off the ballot, and there's going to be 25, 26 states that are going to take Biden off the ballot. Okay? And then a couple that are left that leave them both on. No, we don't need that." So that was good news to start the day. Then, of course, you got the special counsel's report on Joe Biden and his storing classified documents that he was never allowed to have because he was never president. Okay, so he stole these out of the skiff. Storing them in his garage next to his Corvette because that's secure, right? And Joe's defense was, well, the garage was locked. BFD, my house is locked too. Doesn't mean I'm storing national secrets in the house. Well, special counsel Hur determined that there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute Joe criminally, and that it really wasn't worth the time, that by the time this all went through court, he's a person elderly who doesn't have a good memory. Well, of course, Joe went ballistic on that part, saying he's the most qualified person in the United States to be president, that his memory is fine, and moments later called the Egyptian president the president of Mexico. Okay. Again, we have to think about this. In this week, let's talk about the most qualified person for president. He mentioned having conversations with Francois Mitterrand, okay, who's been dead for 20 years. He mistook Angela Merkel for Helmut Kohl. Now, that's good, because not only did he not remember who the German chancellor was, but he, like any Democrat, can't figure out the difference between a man and a woman. Okay. He couldn't remember what year Beau Biden died, even though how many times he's told us that Beau died in Iraq, which he didn't. Okay. And now we have confusing the Egyptian president with the Mexican president. He said all this week, and there's one other one that I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. Joe's the most incompetent, least qualified person to hold office in the United States. So, of course, now the GOP is flapping their mouth, as they always do. Oh, it's time to consider the 25th Amendment. You know, he's not competent enough to run this. Maybe the cabinet should make this decision to remove Joe from office. Yep. Okay, none of it's going to happen. The interesting part with all of this is this special counsel report blows complete holes in the case against Trump in regards to holding classified documents. Okay. Because if Joe's garage has now been determined as safe enough, and he's too old, well, he's not that much older than Trump. Granted, Trump's cognitive abilities are tenfold what Biden's are. But this goes back to the argument that's been made many times. The documents that Trump had, first off, he was allowed to because he was actually president at the time. And they were in a significantly more secure place, in a safe, in a guarded closet. Okay. So that should completely blow the doors off of the Trump case, which would be another win for Trump. Okay, we'll take that one. So then we continue on to last night, and you had the caucuses, primaries, depending on where you are, for president yesterday. Now remember, a few days ago, Nikki Haley lost to none of the above. Nikki Haley got 33% of the vote, and 62% of the vote went to none of the above. Now, that wasn't official, didn't matter, whatever. They could have done a survey in a supermarket. That was about as effective as that was. Who cares? But, of course, Nikki Haley's accusing Trump of rigging the primaries, which, of course, Trump had nothing to do with it. This was the party and the Democrats flipping over how they wanted to do things, and the GOP said no a couple of years ago. Trump won 99% of the caucus yesterday in Nevada. Okay, pretty simple. He won. Okay, he gets all 26 votes from Nevada at the convention this summer to be the Republican candidate. And of course, we also had the Virgin Islands yesterday, which can vote in the primaries, okay, for who the candidate is. They can't vote in the regular election. Nikki Haley's people, I was all over Twitter yesterday, we're going to win the Virgin Islands. We're going to win the Virgin Islands. I'm thinking to myself, BFD. Well, Trump won the Virgin Islands 3-1. Okay, so yeah, Nikki, you got crushed there too. But just to give you an idea of how big that was, Trump won the vote by like 180 votes to like 60. 240, 250 people bothered to come out and vote. Okay, but that Nikki Haley they were all over yesterday saying they're going to win this. Done. Okay, get over it already. Trump's the nominee, Nikki. Drop out. Your political career is done. End of story. Even if by some deal, we all know what you're hoping for. That Trump will get incarcerated and you're the only one left. I hate to tell you that. Even if that happens, you still won't win because none of us will vote for you. We don't want another neocon rhino, Comrade Nikki, in the White House, simply put. But then the biggest one of the day yesterday was the well-anticipated Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin last night. If you sat through it, 2 hours and 7 minutes of it, I made it through about an hour and 45. I couldn't make it anymore. It was just droning on. But you listen to it, and kudos to Tucker for getting the interview. But there was nothing that was said by Putin that either wasn't very common knowledge or wasn't true. For the first half an hour, it was hilarious listening to this. For the first half an hour, Tucker asked a question. He says, give me 30 seconds, Putin. Give me 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a little bit of the history of Russia, Ukraine. And he went on for a half an hour. And the frustration on Tucker's face, and even preluded the whole interview with how it started, was just droning on and on and on. And eventually they got into serious questions. Now, one thing Putin mentioned in there that I've told you guys many times about Bill Clinton, the Democrats, and Hillary had part in this, okay? Screwed everything up back in the 90s, because when the Soviet Union fell, and Putin even mentioned this yesterday, which was nice because so many people have said, oh, that never happened, and Tucker even showed video clip of it, and Putin talking about it. Putin wanted to join the EU. Okay? He wanted to be an ally of the United States. Made sense, okay? At the time, we'd just come out of the first Gulf War. We knew who the enemy was. Same enemy we still have, radical Islam. Russia has the problem with radical Islam as an enemy as well. It would have been a great idea to collectively destroy radical Islam completely. And Putin went and said to Clinton, hey, we want to be part of the EU. We want to ally with you. And Clinton said, interesting idea. Let me talk to my advisors, which of course meant Hillary. Okay. And a few hours later says, I don't think that's going to be possible. Why? Because in the 90s, all the good old boys in Washington still wanted to keep the Cold War going because the Cold War was good for their pocketbook. So as Putin went on, another big lie he told in there was that last year that Russia was the number one economy in Europe. That's not true. Okay. They talked about multiple different things, whether it was Christianity, whether it was the reasons of going into Ukraine. I got the whole talk about, and this is what drove me nuts, and this is why I have no horse in this race. Okay. Putin was going back to, well, that area, eastern Ukraine, is Russian territory, and historically it's Russian. If you go back to 1654, that was Russian territory. And I paused this as Mrs. P and I were watching, and I'm like, do you hear how idiotic that idea is? I said, because if you go into it, what if France comes back and says, well, gee, during Napoleon's era, half of Europe was French. We want it all back. Or Germany comes up and says, you know what? In 1942, all of this area was German. We want it back. Or Mexico comes up and says, in 1794, all this area of the United States was Mexican territory. We want it back. You can't just, look at the European map just in the 20th century. In 100 years, how many times things changed? Does the Ottoman Empire exist anymore? No. Okay. Does Yugoslavia exist anymore? No. Okay. Does East Germany exist anymore? No. Okay. We could go back around over and over. You can't just pick a point in history and say, we want the map to go back to this. The world evolves. Okay. Putin came across to me as an intelligent man, and I think we all knew that. Certainly not somebody that's on death's doorstep like the media has been reporting for the last 2 years. Okay. Oh, he's got cancer. Oh, he's about to die. Yada yada. Okay, certainly didn't look like that to me. Okay. He also struck me as a pure politician. Talk for a half an hour, say nothing, and then when there's finally a skosh of information that comes out of his mouth, it wasn't true. Okay. Kudos to Tucker for getting the interview, but I don't think it moved the needle at all. It's going to be interesting to see all the media, how they spin this morning, because the interview was nothing like anybody expected. It wasn't Tucker trying to talk about Donald Trump. I think I heard Trump's name mentioned one time in the whole interview, and that was when Putin said, "And I had a good relationship with Trump," and that was it. Okay, after talking about having a good relationship with George W. Bush, you know, basically it was a comment in passing. So yeah, it was great TV. Probably have, you look at it, it'll probably be the second most watched thing of the year. Super Bowl will be number one. Tucker Carlson's interview will probably be number two. But was there any meat on the bone? No, there was nothing we didn't know. Okay. The one thing that Putin did say that those of us with a brain in the United States have said over and over and over again is this could have been over a long time ago. And the reason it isn't is because of the good old boys network in Washington, the octogenarians who are in there, who are still living in the 1970s and the 1980s, who still want the Cold War. That's the only reason this is going on. Defending Ukraine's borders, no, that has nothing to do with it. It's all Washington is full of warmongers, both sides. Every one of them that wants to keep funding Ukraine is a warmonger. They just want to keep going. This could have been over 2 years ago. That war should have lasted 2 weeks. If it wasn't for the U.S. and all its bobblehead supporters in Europe who just do whatever they're told so the money keeps flowing to them too. If we just said, hey, Ukraine's not a member of NATO, Ukraine's not a member of the EU, Ukraine's not our problem, hundreds of thousands of people would still be alive. Genocide Joe got his name because of what's going on in the Middle East, but you can add the hundreds of thousands of people that have died in Ukraine because of Genocide Joe too. Yesterday was a very interesting day in politics. It's only going to get more and more interesting as we go. All of this is important for us, for the Joe averages, Joe six-packs in the United States to know. Because all of these things that I just talked about directly affect you and how your life is going to continue in this country. Whether or not this country survives, whether or not this country fails, whether or not this country winds up in civil war, whether this country winds up a communist dictatorship. Okay. The masses need to be educated, because God knows the school system ain't doing it. Okay. Those of you that have been around this channel for a long time and have listened are very well educated. Okay. Those of you that are new, this is the kind of stuff that's important, that nobody tells you about. It's about time the public learns. We'll see you later this morning. Pinball out.